Greetings fellow gamers. You guys know I'm quite a bit of a video gamer, and I need to play video games in order to keep myself alive, otherwise I'll freaking liquefy into acidic slime. Therefore, exactly on January 17th of 2024, at around 6:27 PM, I was browsing Steam to quench my lustful gaming desires for something brand new in the store, and as it so happens, there was this tiny little guy with a hefty price of $45 called Dominion 6 that literally just came out. Now, I've never ran into this series before, nor have I ever heard of its developer, Illwinter Game Design, so out of pure boredom and lack of daily brain rot, I clicked on it. And what am I met with? Goofy music, moving PNGs rubbing against each other, way too many letters and numbers that just assumes I can read. Man, there is no way this game just came out in 2024. It looks straight out of late 90s. It reminds me of those very old Heroes of Might and Magic like 4X game that I never actually played, by the way. And to top it off, this game once again is very pricey for what it looks like. Instantly I thought to myself, there's no way this game is anything worth poking my dick at, but the reviews were pretty good and detailed, so I was technically gaslit into getting it. I clicked buy, and thus marking the point of no return as I made the biggest mistake of my goddamn life, because little did I know, I plunged myself into one of the most addicting nightmares I've ever experienced with a video game. Barely 3 weeks in, and I've already reached over 160 hours of playtime, and Dominion 6 is already guaranteed its place on my top 5 games of 2024, and the year has just begun. So buckle up your breechers and
shit in your pants immediately,
because I'm about to share with you the knowledge of the Pantocrator. But before I do that, let me remind you fine folks that I stream all of my gaming shenanigans here on YouTube with absolutely no schedule and state-of-the-art streaming quality. So make sure you skullfuck that bell button to know when I'm live and come say hi to me while I calmly and respectfully play a ranked video game.
Oh, and she used the rage art! No! She missed!
Now, where was I? Upon installing the game, the first thing you notice is that the game is only 642 megabytes, which is pretty crazy for a $45 game. You are then greeted by this very cheap looking UI and goofy 3D background in the main menu. This feels almost intentional, as if to scare new players into thinking they just threw their money into the blender. Click that start button. You will start by selecting the world, which by default is randomly generated with parameters you provide. You select map size as well as possible layouts of the landmass, sea, and underground caves. You can also choose if you want to be able to traverse to the edge of the world and end up on the other side of the map. You can also load up a custom map or create one yourself in the game editor. And then at this point, we get to the part where the game flexes the enormous proportions of its cock, where you pick between 3 ages to play in as well as a nation. You see, by far the coolest and most interesting part of this game is its nations and lore, as well as absolutely ridiculous amount of them. Early age, for example, starts you with 35 completely unique nations with individual unit rosters, cultures, unique spells, and gameplay mechanics. Each nation in Dominion 6 is based on real-world cultures, but with a fantasy twist on them, as well as heavy focus on the culture's mythology rather than history. These nations have their own lore and history in the game, as well as stories of how they survived throughout the 3 ages. Some nations evolve with the age, some devolve, some split into multiple nations or disappear altogether. For example, one of my favorite early age nations is Mekone. Now imagine Sparta of the classical period. You have the upper class minority of ethnic Spartans, you have the Perioikoi, who are the free Greeks inhabiting the lands of Sparta, but are not legal citizens, and finally, I have the Helot majority, who are the slaves of the realm, ruled over with oppression and tyranny. It's the exact same faction in Dominion 6, except Spartans are actually giants known as Gigantes, ruling over human helots.
Today's subject: slavery.
The game even has Cryptia, which is a festival where Gigantes are allowed to kill their helots for sport. Gigantes consist of lazy tyrants with terrible mages, but some of the best hoplites in the world, as well as literally naked athletes who throw discs at the enemy. While majority of the army consists of helot slaves, who through endless battles can actually learn their freedom, which won't last them very long because you will send them to die anyways. You also have Elder Cyclops, who are friends with the Gigantes, and forge their weapons and armor for them. Now, if you play in Middle Age, you notice that Mekone is not available, and is instead replaced with a nation called Plegra. You see, in the lore, sometimes by the end of early age, Gigantes decided to declare war on the fucking gods
And shut your bitch ass up!
and lost, so they were cursed. Now Gigantes appear as crazed barbarians with green scaly legs, losing their civilized manliness and physique. This also means that their tyranny is now mixed with insanity and cruelty, so helots are treated even worse and can no longer earn their freedom. So now the army are mostly consistent of scared shitless helots with abysmal morale, younger cyclopses, and crazed Gigantes. Now if you play in late age, Flegra is miraculously still there, but now Gigantes are long since gone, the cyclopses are smaller and fewer, and the realm is governed by humans, who instead of liberating their fellow helots, said fuck it, we grind, and decided to keep oppressing them further.
take this shit no more, man.
So slavery is kind of the ongoing tradition of this nation, regardless of who's in charge. Except in mid-game, what's left of the Gigantes actually returns, now in their final cursed form, where they become abominable monstrosities with serpents instead of limbs. Absolutely batshit insane and hungry for hell and ass, they return from their slumber.
I'm about to nut.
I think Mikoni is a perfect example of how this game aces its nations, as you can expect the same level of lore and age progression for other factions too. There's of course a lot more to say about each faction and the variations of each faction, but the video will go on for hours, so let's just go to the next step. You can pick to play with as many players and AI as there are factions available in the age, as there can be 2 of the same faction on the world map. And then you have to create your god. That's right. The whole point of the default throne ascension game mode is to have your pretending god become the next god of the world by ascending enough thrones randomly placed around the world. First you pick the pretending god's physical form, in which he walks the world. It could be in the shape of a mortal, a monster, a titan, or an inanimate object like a fucking statue. Each comes with its own benefits, and it is also nation specific. For example, if you pick a Greek style faction, you will choose between Greek gods, Norse gods for Norse factions, Middle Eastern gods for Middle Eastern factions, and so on. Your god can be anything between a magical prophet, a dragon, a statue, or a fucking pile of bones. You then have points to split between your god's starting magical strength and paths, as well as stats of your dominion itself, that being the buffs or debuffs that your religion provides. You can also choose to make your god dormant or imprisoned to give yourself a lot of extra points to spend. Dormant means your god won't be available until 12 turns into the game, while imprisoned means they won't be available for 36 turns. Depending on the number of points you put into your god's magic path, you can also pick from a big variety of blessings that are permanent buffs for some of your units. Now, starting the video game, you spawn seemingly in the void with nothing but your capital city and some surrounding provinces. Your brain is already melting from the number of things on screen, and rightfully so. There's army management, army recruitment, spells, researches, diplomacy, and all other sorts of crap. Indeed, this game is extremely mechanic heavy, but fear not, as while there's an extreme learning curve and mastery, this game ain't so hard to learn to get into. So let's get over the basics. I wouldn't even call this game turn-based, to be honest, because every player or AI plays their turn at the same time, and then after you press the end button, it simulates the results of the previous turn. So back to the world map. You got your capital, which is usually the highest tier fortification that your faction can build, so let's assume it's a castle. Each region in the world is randomly generated, and every player or AI starts up with one capital city, while every other region is controlled by independent AI that you have to conquer to get to the other players. Regions have their own biomes, AI factions, secrets, events, temperatures, real-time population, income, and even resources. In a fortified settlement, you can recruit your own faction's units, and there are 2 types of recruitables. Commanders, these are the big boys who are your hero type characters, who are either army generals, scouts, priests, mages, or faction-specific specialists. The second type of units are your soldiers that you field in your army. You can also hire mercenaries by bidding on them with gold alongside other players. The highest bidder gets them next turn. The more populous the province, the more recruitment points it has. You also have your god, who actually can die and be resurrected by your priests. Your god's combat effectiveness depends on the god you picked. Obviously, if you picked a fucking water fountain to worship, don't expect it to solo armies, let alone actually be able to fucking move, by the way. Speaking of which, every single unit, even just a common grunt, has its own personal dynamic stats, inventory, equipment, age, effects, and experience with insane detail. Once you create your queue, your units will appear in the province next turn. Now it's time to talk about how you'll be playing the game. You cannot just move your soldiers around the map nilly-willy. For that, you need to attach them to a commander. When you start the game, you're surrounded by empty lands, and that is because you simply don't know who lives there. So the first move is always to send out a scout while you prepare your first little army. Once you open the army setup screen, you notice that there is a lot of shit to look at. First of all, you can really move any units between town, garrison, and each commander. You can set up your army's formations and orders of how you want your soldiers to act during battle. You see, every single battle is auto-resolved, and you only get to see how the battle played out after the turn has ended. The units will fight based on the formations and orders that you gave them prior to the fight. So, for example, if I place my light infantry in a line formation in front, ask them to hold at first and then advance towards the enemy, that's exactly what the army will do when you order it to attack a province. You can use basic orders or super advanced order queues, where you can manually decide each and every fucking move of the unit. There are 3 categories of units that your commander can lead: the living, the magical, and undead. Some commanders can only field living units, while others can only lead undead, and so on. For example, this bitch can only lead 1 formation of either 15 living creatures or 17 magical creatures, while this commander can lead up to 3 formations of 125 living creatures in total. Each formation is fully customizable, and you can mix different units together or split them into different formations. You can then fully customize location and battle formation you want to assign to each unit. Some more premium commanders can assign better and more diverse formations. You can bring as many commanders together into battle as you want, so you can build endlessly massive armies, but be careful to watch out for the supply, because your ungrateful little gluttonous soldiers will eat through your pocket, and if they run out of food, little fuckers will start dying or getting diseases. Oh yeah, there's a full health system in this game, as complex as that of Arma Ace Medical. Game keeps track of each individual soldier's health, which is pretty crazy. There are just so many statuses that troops troops can be afflicted with. Becoming blind, getting fucking shell-shocked, they can also lose their limbs, as there are full limb system in this game. Locations and battlegrounds also come in consideration, such as caves being pitch black, so creatures that see better in the dark perform better in the battle. The game has extremely a vast number of options when it comes to army building. Every unit that dies forever, unless they have the immortal trait. Units that survive the battle but rout away will bring their cowardly ass to a nearby friendly province. After you do successfully capture a province, you can now recruit local units of that region to bolster your armies, which brings a lot of diversity and strategy to the game. For example, your faction doesn't have gills, but you need to conquer an underwater throne, conquer a province of aquatic lizards, and recruit them into your army. Some locations even have super rare units you can recruit, like these elite units of Bloodguard, who actually get very homesick. So fucking homesick, in fact, that if they leave their hometown, they fucking dissolve. But you can also construct a new fortification there to recruit your faction units, but keep in mind that fortifications suck all the resources of adjacent regions, so it's best to make sure there's at least 2 spaces in between each castle. Does this remind you of Catan? The higher level fortifications build, the harder it is for the enemy to siege. Some units can cross through mountains, some units can fly and avoid terrain completely, some units can sail through rivers, some units can breathe underwater, some units can only breathe underwater. But that's not all. The game has multiple typography levels as well, with 2 main ones being the ground realm and the underground realm, as well as a lot of faction specific realms. There's so much potential stats and endless amount of variety amongst troops, but battles are a lot more than just units grinding against each other. There is also magic. There are 9 types of magic and 7 categories of spells. The types are as follows: fire, air, water, earth, astral, death, nature, glamour, and blood. And the categories are conjuration, alteration, evocation, construction, enchantment, thaumaturgy, and blood sacrifice. And the overall spells split into 2 kinds: battle spells that your mages automatically use in battle, and ritual spells that you manually order mages to cast on the world map. Let me first tell you, because I cannot stress this enough, there is a lot of spells in this game. As a matter of fact, I've never seen this many detailed spells in a video game before. There are general spells that all factions have available for each school of magic, and there are a lot of unique nation exclusive spells. Like, look at this shit, for example. These are just general conjuration spells, just conjuration. But this is not all. There's also extreme spells that you unlock by fully researching a school. In order to research, you need to have a lab built in a province, and then assign anybody with research ability to work there. You can have endless amount of researchers, so spamming them is a great idea. Each spell has a level of requirement in order to be cast. For example, if you want to summon a black servant, yeah, it's a real spell, you need a mage with at least 2 skills in death magic. And also you need magic gems to cast it. Oh yeah, ritual spells cost magic gems to be cast. In order to get magic gems, you have to find magic sites in regions using mages. For example, if you find a nature magic site, it will produce nature gems every turn as long as you own this province. You can also use alchemy to convert gems into different types of gems, with the exception of blood magic, because blood magic requires you to sacrifice virgin girls. Yeah, that's an actual core game mechanic. You have to send out your commanders on blood hunts in your own regions, where they attack local farms and kidnap virgin girls for sacrificial rituals. This will greatly increase unrest, and sometimes families of those girls will try to fight your commanders, but they just don't respect your hustle, so you gotta deal with them accordingly. Never sleep on spells, as they're extremely powerful. For example, I dedicated my full realm to nature and conjuration, and by late game, I was fielding massive armies of big summoned poison dragons who just stomp enemies' entire armies. Spells are all very unique from each other and are very well written and balanced. You can explore them endlessly, even if you're playing the game over and over with the same faction in the same era. But spells aren't the only thing you can spend gems on. You can also craft items for your heroes that can potentially give insane stats and are definitely a game changer. There are also random events that happen in your region every couple of turns or so. They can be good, like magic sites appearing. They can be terrible, like a bunch of goats arriving at your doorstep, leading to a massive dragon following them and devastating your entire town. The number of events is actually insane. As of writing this particular line, I'm about 160 hours into the game, and I still see new events popping up. Like, for example, I just had an event where rainwater that villagers collected in a barrel came alive as a water elemental and snuck into a tavern where my chariot officer was having a little bit of late night fun and decided to attack him. God bless those random drunk peasant girls who protected him with their bodies. You also have your Dominion, which is highlighted in yellow on the map, which is basically the spread of your religion. If a province follows your religion, it gets all the benefits or drawbacks that you selected in the beginning, even if you don't have control over the region. In order to spread your dominion, you need priests to preach there and build temples. Speaking of which, there are endless ways of interacting with your enemy, even if you have a non-aggression pact with them. You can send spies, assassins, or if you're Greek, you can even send a skeptic, who is a professional yapper. He will enter enemy's territory undercover, create his own atheist podcast where he will start dropping popularity of the enemy's gods. Make sure he doesn't get caught though, because as he will later find out, dogs are faster than he thought. You can even send ladies to seduce enemy commanders and convert them to your side. Watch out though, if the enemy commander ends up being a woman, she won't be very happy with your seduction attempt, so you might as well fucking kill her. I can't even begin scratching the surface with the number of possibilities you can do in this game, especially when it comes to fucking with your enemy. It ranges from causing a disease in their capital to opening a goddamn Oblivion gate outside their god's outhouse. The amount of playstyles, factions, gods, magic, school variety is unlike anything else I've ever seen in a video game. The amount of replayability in this game is literally unmatched. You know you're in for a good time when the game has a 444-page manual that you will never read. I'm not kidding, it's massive. You can play the game in multiplayer with peer-to-peer server hosting as well as public playrooms with pretty much as many players as you want. You either play free-for-all with diplomacy or you can do team games. Overall, Dominion 6 has already earned its spot in my top 5 games of 2024. All things considered, this was a very short summary of the game, as there are just enormous amounts of things to talk about in this game. The absolutely absurd amount of content and detail would drown you into the endless rabbit hole of playing and exploring this game further. In my personal opinion, and it's just my opinion, if I'm expected to pay $70 for a half-assed AAA title that I'm expected to play for like 6 hours, then why would it be unfair to buy a game for $40 that provides you with endless hours of entertainment? Yes, I absolutely recommend you buy this game, and it is worth every penny. Thank you guys for watching this cringy review, and do let me know in the comments of other games that you want me to take a look at next. Now have a good one.